Breaking: Paul Heyman just stabbed Seth Rollins in the back and reunited with Brock Lesnar at Crown Jewel. Are you kidding me right now? After everything Seth Rollins has done for WWE, after carrying this company on his back week after week, Paul Heyman just delivered the most disrespectful, gut-wrenching betrayal we've seen in years. And he did it on one of the biggest stages in WWE, at Crown Jewel, in front of the entire world. I'm not even going to sugarcoat this. What Paul Heyman did to Seth Rollins wasn't just a betrayal. It was character assassination. It was a calculated execution of Seth's credibility. And the worst part? Heyman did it with that smug smile on his face while standing next to the beast incarnate, Brock Lesnar, like the last few months meant absolutely nothing. But here's what's making me absolutely furious, and I want you to tell me if you feel the same way in the comments right now. How does WWE expect us to believe anything Paul Heyman says ever again? How are we supposed to invest emotionally in any storyline involving the wise man when he changes allegiances faster than most people change their socks? Let me take you through exactly what happened at Crown Jewel, because this betrayal has layers upon layers of deception, manipulation, and calculated cruelty that would make a soap opera villain jealous. Seth Rollins walked into Crown Jewel with a target on his back. He was scheduled to face a formidable opponent in what was being positioned as one of the showcase matches of the entire event. And in the weeks leading up to Crown Jewel, Paul Heyman had been in Seth's corner. Not officially as his manager, but as someone who seemed to be offering guidance, wisdom, and strategic advice. Now, looking back with hindsight, we should have seen this coming. Paul Heyman doesn't do anything out of the kindness of his heart. The wise man always has an agenda. Always. But WWE and Heyman played this so perfectly that even the most cynical wrestling fans started to believe that maybe, just maybe, Heyman was genuinely trying to help Seth reach that next level. Heyman had been cutting promos about how Seth Rollins was being underutilized, how Seth deserved more respect, how Seth should be positioned as the face of WWE alongside names like Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. He spoke passionately about Seth's work ethic, his in-ring ability, and his dedication to the business. And Seth, to his credit, was skeptical at first. Seth Rollins knows Paul Heyman's history. He knows about Heyman's relationship with Brock Lesnar. He knows about the bloodline. Seth isn't naive. But Heyman was so convincing, so persistent, and seemingly so genuine that Seth started to let his guard down. That was his first mistake. And it might be the mistake that costs him everything. Here's a question I need you to answer honestly in the comments. Did you see this betrayal coming, or did Paul Heyman successfully work you into believing he was actually helping Seth? The match at Crown Jewel started normally enough. Seth Rollins came out with his usual intensity and energy. The crowd was electric. The atmosphere in the arena was absolutely incredible, as it always is for Crown Jewel events. Seth looked focused and ready to prove that he belonged in the conversation as one of WWE's elite performers. And then, approximately 15 minutes into the match, everything changed. Seth was in control. He had hit several of his signature moves. The momentum was clearly on his side. He was building toward what looked like it would be a decisive victory that would validate everything Paul Heyman had been saying about him deserving more recognition. And that's when the music hit. Brock Lesnar's music echoed through the arena, and the entire place erupted. But not in a good way. There was confusion. There was shock. Brock Lesnar wasn't scheduled to be at Crown Jewel. There had been no indication that the Beast Incarnate was even in Saudi Arabia. Seth's reaction told you everything you need to know. He froze. You could see the wheels turning in his head as he tried to process what was happening. Was this an unscheduled appearance? Was Brock there to attack both competitors and make a statement? Or was something far more sinister happening? The answer came quickly and brutally. Brock Lesnar marched down to the ring with Paul Heyman trailing behind him. And here's the detail that should have immediately told everyone what was about to happen. Heyman had that smile on his face. Not a smile of surprise or confusion. A smile of satisfaction. A smile that said, the plan is coming together perfectly. Seth Rollins, standing in the middle of the ring, looked directly at Paul Heyman. You could see Seth mouthing words, probably asking what Heyman was doing, why he was bringing Brock to the ring. And Paul Heyman, the master manipulator, just shrugged, just smiled. Just pointed at Brock Lesnar like a proud father showing off his favorite son. And then Brock entered the ring. Seth tried to defend himself. Give him credit for that. Seth Rollins isn't someone who backs down from a fight, even against a physical specimen like Brock Lesnar. But Seth was already tired from 15 minutes of intense action. He was caught off guard. And he was facing arguably the most dominant physical force in WWE history. Brock hit Seth with a German suplex that nearly sent Seth into the third row. And then another. And then another. The crowd was in shock. Seth's opponent, seeing what was happening, wisely rolled out of the ring and let Brock do his work. And Paul Heyman stood outside the ring, microphone in hand, orchestrating the entire destruction like a conductor leading a symphony. After 3 consecutive German suplexes, Brock picked Seth up and delivered the most devastating F5 I've seen in years. Seth crumpled to the mat like someone had cut his strings. He wasn't moving. The referee was checking on him. Medical personnel started making their way to the ring. And Paul Heyman? Paul Heyman grabbed Brock's hand and raised it high in the air, declaring that the Beast Incarnate was back and more dangerous than ever. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this before commenting. What was more shocking, the fact that Brock returned, or the fact that Paul Heyman so casually destroyed any trust Seth Rollins had placed in him? But the betrayal wasn't over. Oh no. Paul Heyman had to twist the knife even further. After Brock's music stopped playing and the initial shock wore off, Heyman grabbed a microphone. And what came out of his mouth next was so disrespectful, so condescending, that I'm surprised Seth didn't get up and attack Heyman despite being completely destroyed. Heyman explained that everything he had said about Seth Rollins over the past few weeks was a lie. Not a work. Not a manipulation. A complete and total lie. Heyman said that he never believed Seth deserved to be mentioned in the same breath as Roman Reigns or Cody Rhodes. He said Seth was exactly what he had always been, a talented worker bee who makes other people look good but will never be the guy. Heyman went on to say that Seth's biggest accomplishment was being a member of the Shield alongside Roman Reigns. That Seth had spent his entire career living in Roman's shadow and always would. That Seth was delusional if he thought befriending Paul Heyman would somehow elevate his status in WWE. And then came the line that made my blood boil. Heyman said, and I quote, "Seth Rollins, you were never my client. You were my entertainment. And now that entertainment has run its course." Can you believe that? The sheer arrogance. The utter disrespect. And the worst part is that Paul Heyman delivered these lines with such conviction, such confidence, that you couldn't help but wonder if there was some truth to what he was saying. Heyman then turned his attention to Brock Lesnar and explained why he had reunited with the Beast. According to Heyman, WWE had become soft. The roster had become complacent. Everyone was content with having good matches and telling nice stories, but nobody embodied pure, unadulterated dominance like Brock Lesnar. Heyman declared that the Heyman-Lesnar alliance was back and that they had one goal, to remind everyone that in WWE, there's the top of the food chain, and then there's everyone else. And Brock Lesnar, with Paul Heyman by his side, sits alone at the top of that food chain. The implications of this are absolutely massive. Let me break down exactly why this betrayal and reunion changes everything for WWE moving forward. First, there's the personal toll on Seth Rollins. Seth has been betrayed before. He was betrayed by the Authority after they used him for years. He's been on the receiving end of shocking attacks and turned on by former allies. But this betrayal hits different because Seth actually started to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone in a position of influence actually saw his value. Paul Heyman spent weeks building Seth up, only to tear him down in the most public and humiliating way possible. That's not just a physical beatdown. That's psychological warfare. That's the kind of thing that gets in a performer's head and affects everything they do going forward. Seth now has to wrestle with some serious questions. Was anything Heyman said genuine? Were there kernels of truth mixed in with the lies? Does WWE management actually see him the way Heyman described? Is he really just a worker bee who will never reach that top tier? Here's what I want to know from you in the comments. How should Seth Rollins respond to this betrayal? Should he go on a rampage seeking revenge, or should he use this as motivation to prove Heyman wrong? Second, there's the immediate impact on the WWE roster. Brock Lesnar being back, aligned with Paul Heyman, makes everyone a potential target. Brock doesn't care about rules. He doesn't care about rankings or storylines. When Brock wants to hurt someone, he hurts them. And with Heyman providing the strategic mind behind Brock's raw power, there's literally no one safe. Think about the top stars in WWE right now. Cody Rhodes just defeated Roman Reigns and has positioned himself as the face of the company. How does Cody feel knowing that Brock Lesnar is back and potentially coming for him? Gunther has been dominant as Intercontinental Champion and seems destined for world title glory. Does Brock decide that Gunther needs to be humbled? Drew McIntyre, LA Knight, even Roman Reigns himself, everyone becomes a potential victim of this reunited alliance. Third, there's the impact on the Bloodline storyline. Because let's not forget that Paul Heyman has been the Bloodline's wise man for years. He was the special counsel to Roman Reigns during the Tribal Chief's legendary run. He was there for every major moment, every big match, every title defense. So what does this reunion with Brock mean for the Bloodline? Is Heyman completely done with Roman and Solo Sikoa? Or is this part of some larger plan that we don't understand yet? Could Heyman be trying to position Brock as the Bloodline's ultimate weapon? The possibilities are endless, and that's both exciting and terrifying. Because if there's one thing we know about Paul Heyman, it's that he's always playing 4D chess while everyone else is playing checkers. Let me ask you this, do you think Paul Heyman is completely done with the Bloodline, or is this Brock reunion somehow connected to Roman Reigns and the larger Bloodline story? Drop your theories in the comments. Now let's talk about Brock Lesnar himself and what this return means for him. Brock has been absent from WWE for a significant period. There were rumors about his contract status, questions about whether he was retired, speculation about potential appearances in other promotions. But Brock is back, and if his attack on Seth Rollins is any indication, he's more motivated and dangerous than ever. Brock Lesnar with Paul Heyman is an entirely different beast than Brock Lesnar without Paul Heyman. We saw that during Brock's brief run without Heyman a few years ago. Brock is an incredible physical specimen and an amazing athlete, but Heyman provides the voice, the narrative, and the strategic thinking that makes Brock feel larger than life. Together, they've created some of the most memorable moments in WWE history. Brock ending The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak. Brock's dominant title runs. Brock's matches with John Cena, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins himself. The Heyman-Lesnar alliance has been responsible for some of the most important storylines in modern WWE. And now they're back together with a clear purpose to dominate WWE and remind everyone why Brock Lesnar is called the Beast Incarnate. But here's what's interesting about this particular reunion. Brock and Heyman have split up and reunited before. This isn't the first time they've parted ways, and it probably won't be the last. But the circumstances of this reunion are unique because of how they used Seth Rollins as a pawn in their game. This wasn't just Brock showing up unannounced and attacking someone. This was a carefully orchestrated plan where Paul Heyman gained Seth's trust over several weeks, built him up, made him believe that positive change was coming, and then brought Brock in to completely destroy Seth both physically and psychologically. That level of calculated cruelty is different from Brock and Heyman's previous work. It suggests that this version of their partnership might be the most vicious and dangerous yet. Think about it from Brock's perspective. He's been away from WWE for a while. He could have returned by interrupting a random segment or attacking whoever the current champion is. That would have been impactful but relatively straightforward. Instead, Brock and Heyman crafted a multi-week storyline specifically designed to build someone up before tearing them down. That takes planning, patience, and a level of malice that's honestly impressive from a storytelling standpoint, even if it's morally reprehensible. Here's another question for the comments, and I'm really curious about this one. Do you think this is the most heel version of Brock Lesnar we've ever seen, or have there been moments in his career where he was even more villainous? We also need to discuss the business implications of this reunion. Brock Lesnar is one of the biggest draws in WWE history. When Brock is on a card, people buy tickets. They order the premium live events. They tune in to see what Brock is going to do next. And Paul Heyman cuts promos that go viral and generate buzz across social media. From WWE's perspective, having Brock back with Heyman is a massive win, especially as they continue to build relationships in international markets like Saudi Arabia. Crown Jewel is always one of WWE's biggest events of the year, and having a shocking moment like this betrayal and reunion at Crown Jewel creates headlines that reach far beyond the wrestling bubble. But here's where things get complicated from a creative standpoint. WWE has been trying to build new stars and create a roster that doesn't rely solely on part-time legends. Triple H's creative regime has emphasized long-term storytelling and elevating younger talent. So how does Brock Lesnar, the ultimate part-time attraction, fit into that vision? The answer might be that Brock serves as the final boss for WWE's rising stars to conquer. Brock can come in, dominate for a few months, and then a young star like Gunther or Braun Breaker can be the one to finally slay the beast. That would be a massive moment that could legitimize a new main event talent. But there's also the risk that Brock's presence overshadows everyone else. That WWE falls back into old patterns where the part-time star is protected and prioritized over full-time roster members. That would be a step backward for WWE's creative direction and could create resentment among the locker room. Only time will tell how WWE navigates this, but the Seth Rollins betrayal suggests that WWE is willing to sacrifice even established stars like Seth to make Brock and Heyman feel like the most dominant force in the company. Let's also talk about what this means for Paul Heyman's legacy. Because love him or hate him, Paul Heyman is one of the most influential figures in wrestling history. He was the creative genius behind ECW. He's been an advocate for some of the biggest stars of multiple generations. He's cut promos that are studied by wrestling students around the world. But Heyman's greatest strength is also his Achilles heel. Nobody trusts him. And why should they? Heyman has betrayed almost everyone he's ever worked with. He turned on CM Punk. He's played both sides of the bloodline situation. And now he's betrayed Seth Rollins in spectacular fashion. At a certain point, the question becomes, how can WWE continue to use Paul Heyman as a character when everyone knows he's going to betray whoever he's currently aligned with? Doesn't that make every storyline involving Heyman predictable? The counterargument is that Heyman's betrayals are so entertaining and well executed that it doesn't matter if we see them coming. We watch anyway because of how they happen, not whether they happen. And the Seth Rollins betrayal at Crown Jewel is a perfect example. Even if you suspected Heyman might turn on Seth eventually, the way it happened with Brock's return, the calculated timing, and the vicious promo afterward was still shocking and impactful. I want your honest opinion in the comments. Are you tired of Paul Heyman's constant betrayals, or do you think he's such a good performer that it doesn't matter how many times he turns on people? Now let's examine what Seth Rollins' options are moving forward, because Seth is now in a position where he has to respond. He can't just let this slide. His credibility as a main event talent depends on how he handles this situation. Option 1: Seth goes on a revenge tour targeting both Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar. This is the most straightforward option. Seth channels his anger and betrayal into becoming more aggressive and ruthless. He starts attacking Brock whenever possible, trying to even the odds. He cuts promos about how Heyman underestimated him and how Seth is going to prove everyone wrong. The advantage of this approach is that it's emotionally satisfying for fans. We want to see Seth get revenge. We want to see him stand up for himself and fight back against the people who disrespected him. A blood feud between Seth and Brock, with Heyman caught in the middle, could produce some incredible matches and moments. The disadvantage is that it might make Seth look weak if he can't get significant revenge quickly. If Brock continues to dominate Seth in every confrontation, it reinforces Heyman's words about Seth not being on that top tier. Option 2: Seth takes the high road and uses this as motivation to elevate himself without obsessing over revenge. He focuses on winning championships, having great matches, and proving through actions that Heyman was wrong about him. Seth doesn't chase Brock and Heyman, he rises above them. The advantage here is that it protects Seth's character. He doesn't become defined by this betrayal. He doesn't let Heyman and Brock live rent-free in his head. Instead, he channels that negative energy into positive results. The disadvantage is that it might feel unsatisfying from a storytelling perspective. Fans want to see direct confrontation. They want revenge angles. Taking the high road can sometimes feel like Seth is letting Heyman and Brock get away with what they did. Option 3, and this is the most interesting possibility: Seth embraces the darkness. He acknowledges that maybe Heyman was right about some things. Maybe Seth has been too nice, too willing to help others, too content being a supporting player. So Seth becomes ruthless. He becomes the version of himself that will do anything to reach the top, even if it means compromising his principles. This could lead to a heel turn for Seth, which would be fascinating given his current status as one of WWE's top babyfaces. A heel Seth Rollins, driven by the humiliation of Heyman's betrayal and determined to prove his worth by any means necessary, could be absolute gold. Which of these three options do you want to see Seth choose? Or do you have a fourth option that I didn't mention? Let me know in the comments. We should also consider how this affects WWE's championship pictures. Depending on which title Brock targets, this could completely reshape WWE's main event scene. If Brock goes after the World Heavyweight Championship on Raw, that puts him in potential conflict with whoever is currently holding that title. Brock as champion would be a major deal, but it would also mean that the belt might be held by someone who appears sporadically rather than defending it weekly. If Brock targets the WWE Championship on SmackDown, that could lead to a collision course with Cody Rhodes. And a Cody vs. Brock feud, with Paul Heyman's involvement, would be absolutely massive. It would test Cody's position as the face of WWE against one of the most dominant forces in company history. Or maybe Brock doesn't care about championships. Maybe the goal is simply to destroy anyone who Brock and Heyman perceive as obstacles. That would make Brock an even more chaotic element because he'd be unpredictable, showing up randomly to attack people and cause mayhem. There's also the question of whether other wrestlers will align themselves with Seth Rollins to fight back against the Heyman-Lesnar threat. Could we see Seth recruit allies? Could this lead to the reformation of the Shield with Seth, Roman, and someone else standing together against Brock? Or would Seth prefer to handle this himself to prove that he doesn't need anyone? The storytelling possibilities are endless, and that's exciting, but it's also frustrating because we know that WWE doesn't always capitalize on these opportunities. Sometimes they start hot and then the storyline fizzles out. Sometimes they protect the wrong people and sacrifice the wrong people. What I want to see is WWE committing fully to this story. Give Seth and Brock the time and resources to tell a complete, satisfying narrative. Let Seth have his moments of victory along with his defeats. Make this feel like an evenly matched feud rather than just Brock running through Seth repeatedly. Here's my final question for you before we wrap this up. On a scale of 1 to 10, how angry are you about Paul Heyman betraying Seth Rollins, and do you think WWE will book the follow-up to this storyline correctly? The Paul Heyman betrayal of Seth Rollins at Crown Jewel is one of the most significant moments WWE has had all year. It's shocking, it's emotional, and it has massive implications for multiple storylines going forward. Paul Heyman has once again proven why he's called the wise man by executing a betrayal that nobody saw coming in quite this form. Brock Lesnar is back, he's aligned with Heyman, and he's more dangerous than ever. Seth Rollins has been humiliated and destroyed both physically and psychologically. And WWE's landscape has been completely altered by one moment at Crown Jewel. Now we wait to see how this plays out. Will Seth get his revenge? Will Brock dominate WWE for months to come? Will Paul Heyman betray Brock eventually too? And most importantly, will WWE deliver on the promise of this incredible setup? Make sure you drop your thoughts, predictions, and reactions in the comments below. Tell me how you feel about Heyman's betrayal. Tell me what you want to see happen next. And tell me if you think this will be remembered as one of the great wrestling betrayals or if WWE will fumble the follow-through. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates on this developing story. This is far from over, and you're going to want to follow every twist and turn as Seth Rollins, Brock Lesnar, and Paul Heyman continue this war.